Baby gorillas. That was unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, what happened in the last chat? They pulled us down halfway through the stream. Said there was no bandwidth. I don't know what's happening. I'm going to sort that out anyway. And they pulled us down halfway down the stream. And then they've just told us just now that there was not enough bandwidth to, for whatever reason. Now, I've got one of the top sort of bandwidths you can get. And so they pulled down the last stream. They wouldn't let this stream go. Then the camera wasn't connecting to the server. And yeah, I spent about an hour in the last stream chatting away. Let me just make sure that you guys are hearing this. Chatting away to myself when the stream had been stopped and pulled down. That's what happened to in the middle of the last stream.
Hey, look, it's your heater and air conditioner. This power couple has been with you through a lot.
Chatting away. Let me just make sure that you guys are hearing this. Chatting away to myself when the stream had been stopped and pulled down. That's what happened to in the middle of the last stream. I mean, it's quite incredible, and quite incredible what the lengths that they're going to now to actually prevent of, especially informed dissent as well. I mean, it's not just that just some random just making anti the political class comments. This is almost, we're almost Edwardian here. We're almost at a stage where we're getting told what to do and what not to do. What's happening, boys? Guerilla, come. So they're now pulling down podcasts. They're trying to stop the podcast, pulling the podcast down halfway through it, as I was just coming to some absolutely brilliantly salient points. And they're just trying to hamper in any way possible with the actual broadcast. It's absolutely staggering. Absolutely staggering how badly they are mucking about with the actual podcast if it's going against the political narrative. And this is it's Orwellian. I think they read 1984 in Animal Farm as a way to actually implement policy. I think that's what they think. Oh, listen, let's implement 1984 in Animal Farm. That's the policies we need to go for. While at the head of the hog, feasting themselves merrily. Yeah, we don't need to follow the rules. Yeah, we'll just make up the rules to suit ourselves. Yeah. They're trying to impose communism on you while having corporatism for themselves. And like a communist revolution wouldn't actually benefit this, because it would just be, they would probably have the same entities at the top of a communist revolution, so that's not getting rid of it. They are trying to impose communism and destruction of the national state, which is obviously to bring in the globalist identity. And that's their objective, so that they could sit at the head of the... That's why the open door immigration policy is happening. Inside... I just caught a glimpse of that there. What was that? Inside the elite Kabul neighbourhood where Al-Qaeda leader died. Oh, aye. Let's see if we read that. This is totally off topic. I just got a wee wind of that. So this is in the Guardian. Inside the elite Kabul neighbourhood where Al-Qaeda leader died, the leader of Al-Qaeda spent the last 3 weeks of his life less than 500 metres from a swimming pool and bar where British diplomats relaxed their Kabul tours. All right. The gaudy house where Ayman al-Zarawi was reportedly killed by a drone while out on a balcony is nestled in the very heart of the Afghan capital. By Tuesday morning, sheets of dark green plastic covered shattered windows that were shown in photos shared early on social media by Afghans. I don't know when this is. This is just 3 hours ago. Photos and Afghans' new rulers were aggressive about keeping journalists and curious bystanders from taking closer look at the damaged house. It is our own pain. Let us deal with it. One beleaguered Taliban guard told Guardian reporters after blocking entry to the streets of Zahawi had lived following them as they left the site and demanding access to their phones. Oh, aye. Interesting conversation. So here we go. Conversation. Rishi Sunak has momentum and can stop Rishi. Liz Truss. I think it's a foregone conclusion that Liz Truss is going to win this. This is a done deal. Come, love. Let me keep it up, mate, from Glasgow. Legend. Thanks, buddy. Thank you. I'm telling you, they just won't get us. We'll just keep going and keep going. I think they think we're somebody else. So, let's go and look at Rishi. So let's go in the videos. Let's see if we can find the full interview, because I'm just going to go through this and just pick it apart and tell you what they're not telling you. Right, so 40 minutes. So I think it's about 30 odd minutes we're looking for. And I'm just going to destroy both narratives here. July 17th, 2021. Interview. I had it yesterday. I don't know where it's gone to. Let's see if we can get it in Google. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Is that the preview? Just talk amongst yourselves. So Rishi was having me digs at Liz Truss for being a Remainer and allowing people to come in and pick her crops, because obviously British people won't pick her crops. That's, I mean, it's really, no, that's not it. That's not really it. So I think this is I'm sure it was 31 minutes, but let's see if this is it.
Rishi Sunak, the man who wants to lead the Conservatives, the man who wants to be Prime Minister, do his policy.
Let's just make sure you guys are hearing this and this is still on board, honestly. I shouldn't be having to do this.
Yes, if I had home insurance through Hippo, this could have been avoided. Just watch the ad to see.
It's 31 minutes, but let's see if this is it.
Rishi Sunak.
Right, we're in. This is it. This is it. Let's go. Come on, big nose, fat Andy.
Is that up? Is his judgment sound? Is his character all he claims it to be? It's time to find out. Welcome to a special edition of the Andrew Neil Show, focusing on the race to be Prime Minister.
Now, it should be pointed out, Fat Andy is probably the best, certainly in my lifetime, the best political commentator. And there's been good political commentators in the UK, but Fat Andy has been the best. But Fat Andy is also basically a stooge of the establishment, especially of the globalist elites. And although he's very good and does hold people to account, he never gets really under the information. He sits on top of the information, which allows them to tell you what they want you to know.
And one of the two people still in the running, Rishi Sunak. Good evening.
Good evening, Andrew.
So we've got the World Economic Forum's guy, this fella here, to take over the Conservative Party, or we've got Remainer, Aunt Sally, Liz Truss, to take over the Conservative Remain Party. Anyway, I think Lawrence Fox called the three political parties a mono-party, which is completely correct. I would go as far as say that even the SNP and the Welsh Nationalists and the Greens, I would say it's all pretty much a mono-party. Yes, they have slightly different opinions, but not really that much. And when it comes down to policy, it's minimal what the policy differences are.
Andrew.
Let's start with your judgment, or lack of. Why did you persist with multi-billion-pound tax rises this year when it was already clear the UK economy was heading for a major slowdown?
So not only did he do that, he also allowed increase in the monetary supply. So he increased the monetary supply and then raised taxes on you, while at the same time his wife didn't pay taxes and on Dom. So rules for thee but not for me, while at the same time they locked you in your house for 2 years, forced you to take a drug for your body against your will. I mean, my body, my rights. All these women are chanting my body, my rights, except when it comes to forced vaccinations.
Well, this comes back to a fundamental question at the heart of this leadership election.
Yeah. Why the hell is this guy in here? He's not going to get elected because the grassroots of the Conservative Party will see him as Brutus, and they do not like somebody that it's credit to the rank and file of the Conservative Party. They do not like somebody that stabs somebody else in the back or in the front, as this as the case may be. I mean, they're even wanting Boris to be back on the leadership agenda to find out whether the rank and file would have sacked Boris. And this is where there seems to be becoming a disconnect between the rank and file of the Conservative Party and not even the leadership, but the MPs, or certainly a proportion of the MPs.
And that's, how do we tackle the problems that we racked up during COVID?
Which he did. So he's very smarmy there, while they were hobnobbing and holding parties. Which he racked up, destroyed people's businesses. He did that, kept us in. The damage that he's caused because of locking us in our house was worse than probably the experience of having COVID. It was mainly people who were elderly or who had contraindications. I think somebody quoted 350 people died who weren't actually in either one of these two categories.
Extra borrowing that we had to do to make sure that we got the country through it.
So you were paying people to stay in your houses and be unproductive in the state, which is unproductive anyway because the state's unproductive. And you're destroying private sector businesses for your pals in the WEF.
And we all knew that there'd be a bill to pay. So the question...
Yeah, which you're not taking on your shoulders or your wife's shoulders, but passing it to the British populace who didn't give you or didn't sanction you to hold them in their houses for 2 years.
The question that confronted me and confronts all of us is
why should I be paying taxes when you're not? Is that one of the questions? No.
What do we do about that?
What you do about it is not you and your wife don't pay your taxes, and you raise the taxes on everybody else, which again you've then increased the money supply, which is increased inflation. Now you're going to have to increase interest rates, which have already increased taxation, which means that we're heading for a major recession. That this guy who now wants to be Prime Minister, who was Chancellor, helped us put us in. So I would suggest that we need to get a different way of electing the Prime Minister, because I would suggest that this guy shouldn't even be in the ballot. But because he's got pals in the media like Fat Andy, that Fat Andy, will give him some lowbrow questions and he'll try and sail through this interview, because probably Fat Andy's part of certainly through the BBC, Fat Andy's probably part of the WEF as well. Whether directly or indirectly, I'm not saying he has to have gone to Davos, but he will be being controlled in some level, whether it's whether he would acknowledge it or not.
Do we pay those bills ourselves, or do we pass them on to our children and our grandchildren and expect them to pick up the tab? And alongside that, we also have to think...
Or you could become an omdons and don't pay any taxes. All right, I see. So he's shouting orders at us paying taxes while his wife doesn't pay any taxes. That's clever, isn't it?
About whether we go on a borrowing spree right now.
So now they want to borrow. So not only were they content with destroying businesses, reducing growth, thereby having to, increasing taxations, not to borrow more or to print more money, all of which is inflationary. They are now, what is he going to do, raise taxation, and now he's saying he doesn't want any long-term debts because of the situation that him and his pals in the WEF put us through.
Now,
just the same as they're doing with the Dutch farmers and the great people in Canada as well.
Whether that will make the inflation problem worse and push up interest rates. And that's not something that I wanted to do.
But the problem is not 5 or 10 years. The problem is...
Say that again, Spignose.
Problem worse. Alongside that, we also have to think about pay those bills ourselves, or do we pass them on to our children and our grandchildren and expect them to pick up the tab? And alongside that, we also have to think about whether we go on a borrowing spree right now.
All right, so in the middle of a potential recession, that this doughball wants to think about going on a borrowing spree, while taxation is at its highest in 70-odd years. And we've been locked in our houses, we've destroyed a lot of our economic structure for this great reset with this loon ball in Germany. And... This is his big ideas. I mean, this guy's going to wreck that. We're going to have probably the deepest recession since the 1920s, potentially.
Whether that will make the inflation problem worse and push up...
But you've done all this. It's you that's done all this. You've either done it deliberately and wrecked the British economy, or you haven't. You're an idiot. So I don't know what you prefer. You've either maliciously done it or you've done it because you're an idiot. That could go for the rest of the cabinet as well.
Interest rates, and that's not something that I wanted to do.
But the problem is not 5 or 10 years. The problem is the economic situation now. America is in recession. The Eurozone is on the brink of recession.
Yeah, and Big Nose here doesn't have... Look at his wee smug face. Big Nose here doesn't have any answers.
The Bank of England is tightening monetary policy, which means people's interest rates are going up.
So they're going to... Massive tax increases, increasing your energy costs because they've got the green revolution, increasing... and this is the Tories that are doing it, increase now in interest rates, so your mortgages and all that will get harder to pay. And while at the same time they're not increasing growth because they've dampened every indicator, every possible way of growing your way out of the recovery or out into recovery, because they've increased petrol prices for the green agenda. They've trying to do the Great Reset, increased taxation. Now increasing interest rates, reducing the money supply. I mean, you guys are going to have a major problem.
And you're now tightening fiscal policy, all designed just to make it worse. You're going to ensure a recession.
No, if you look at what's happening around the world, it's inflation that is slowing economies down.
So this is inflation that they've made. This is inflation. They're inflating the prices by increasing your price for petrol and other fuels because of their green agenda. They've locked us in the house for 2 years. They've done the forced vaccinations, which I think 1,000 people are having difficulties from, which might be greater than the people that were affected by COVID. They've increased the money supply. They've done it. Who's to blame? Do you think it was a big boy that did it and he ran away? What did you not know? It was you. You were in cabinet. You were the Chancellor.
It's rising interest rates that are already putting a brake on economic activity, Andrew.
All right. So because you increased money supply through the Bank of England during a time of the COVID, where you locked us on the house, destroyed businesses, which would reduce growth, you then increased the inflation, correct? It was you that did it.
Andrew. And my concern
is of your mental welfare.
Is that I want to get to grips with inflation as
I don't think you could get to grips with your big nose
quickly as possible, because inflation makes
inflation that we did is making everybody's life poorer.
Everybody poorer.
Oh, what a genius.
Erodes people's living standards.
Oh, well, that's great. So let's vote for the guy that did it.
A recession will make everybody poorer too. And
which is exactly what's going to happen. So you're going to have triple whammies. You've got the increase in taxation, increase in interest rates, which is all going to hit you, increase in gas and electricity bills, and a reduction in the money supply. And been held in your house for 2 years because of the corona.
Will make it much harder to balance the budget, make it much harder to reduce the fiscal deficit. Are you...
Say that again, Fat Andy.
Will make everybody poorer too, and will make it much harder to balance the budget, make it much harder to reduce the fiscal...
Yeah, it's going to be harder to balance the budget. Of course it's going to be hard to balance the budget if you keep everybody locked in the house for 2 years. How are they going to grow the economy? How are you going to balance the budget? The budget's not going to be balanced. These clowns are on an agenda, and the agenda is adversely affecting the man and woman in the street.
Deficit. Are you really arguing...
And they're also going to increase the deficit as well, which is going to make your children in the future poorer. Don't forget they've just spent years giving us austerity, these pricks, austerity to reduce the size of our deficit, our budget deficit, and now they've put us back into an increase in a budget deficit again. I mean, honestly, because of the virus.
Your economic position as the global economy grinds to a halt, as monetary policy has been tightening, that it's the right thing to do to tighten fiscal policy as well?
I think...
Yeah. I mean, honestly. People who might not have an economics background or understand economics might just say, I don't know, it's all just double Dutch to me. But Fat Andy just nailed that there. This is what he's done as Chancellor, this incompetent wee midget.
I think it is absolutely the right thing to do to
So
not
there'll
put
be a recession,
fuel
won't
on
there?
the fire.
Halt. As monetary policy has been tightening, that it's the right thing to do to tighten fiscal policy as well?
I think it is absolutely the right thing to do to
So
not
there'll
put
be a recession.
fuel...
Oh my God! So yes, is the answer to that. So basically, he's Rishi's okay. Rishi, who's married to the person that's got £100 million, is okay with you paying more taxes. Rishi's okay with you paying more fuel costs, and Rishi is okay with you increasing interest rates so your mortgage get more expensive. He's okay with that. He doesn't think it's a problem, as long as the deficit doesn't get bigger.
On the fire of the inflation problem that we already have.
Oh, that you've actually got us into. Well done. Oh, look at that. I mean, you can see the wry smugness that he knows that we know that it's him that's actually put us in the situation.
So there'll be a recession.
Well, actually, that's not the forecast of the...
Well, we're already in a recession, although Joe Biden and Dopey, I don't know who, I need to get a fun name for the African lesbian female who diversity hire that's now the press secretary. who doesn't know what the 2 negative quarters is a recession, or is now trying to change it, just like men can be women and women can be men.
The majority of most independent forecasters here in the UK. So that's not actually the majority.
You're going to
of
make
what
it more
think.
likely with this approach to the economy.
Well, no, that they're already forecasting that's not likely to be the case from most of them, actually. But what?
Well, America's in the recession, and we usually follow America. That usually, it doesn't necessarily always go, but it looks like Big Nose here is getting as the Chancellor, getting us into a recession.
What is right
Well,
is
next
the following.
year, the 2 big international forecasts say that we won't grow at all next year.
Well, that's great, Rishi. Well done, son. Yeah, you should definitely run for Prime Minister on the back of your incompetence as Chancellor.
Right, well, let's talk about growth then.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about something else. Seeing everything that you've done as the Chancellor has been a huge mistake.
If we'd like to talk about growth, how do we grow the economy?
Well, certainly not by raising taxes, raising interest rates, raising fuel costs. That's not how you get the economy growing, or locking people in for 2 years. That's what you don't do, Rishi.
Well,
Now,
not by putting it in recession, I think, is the first thing.
Well,
Yeah, well, that's correct as well.
actually, what we need to do is get to grips with inflation quickly, because if we
Yes, or grow the way out the economy.
have inflation that persists for far longer, that's not going to help grow the economy. It's just going to make everybody poorer. And
All right, so the things that you've done to stimulate inflation is now going to make everybody poorer, as does increased taxation, as does increased fuel prices at the pumps. All of these things makes everything and people poorer, but you've got the silver bullet. Oh, I can't wait to hear this crap.
whilst it might make us feel good in the short run,
Oh, but you, having caused inflation, being the arsonist in charge of the fire brigade, all right, you'll be able to put it out for us, Rishi. What a hero.
actually we end up repeating the mistakes of the past, and we've seen how that is. If you borrow tens of billions of pounds, pump that money into an economy, then that fuels inflation.
Oh my goodness, that's such big brain stuff there, isn't it, ladies and gents? Oh, but that's what you've done. That's effectively what you've done. So you obviously know what you've done to cause the inflation, correct?
And that pushes up interest rates even higher.
Oh, it does that. Oh, right. So the things that you've done by pumping billions of pounds into the economy, paying public sector workers when they weren't working money to stay at home, that they were all of this was not inflationary that you did as Chancellor.
Higher, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. Now, of course, Andrew, look, listen.
Listen, it's not my fault, honestly, Gov.
It would be the easiest thing in the world for me to sit here and say, no,
It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was somebody else. Was that Boris Johnson? That's why we got rid of him. It was you.
no, I don't want to do any of these difficult things. I'd like to give everybody all these nice things.
Santa Claus here. So Santa Claus here would like to give everybody nice things like tax increases, interest rate increases, tighten the fiscal monetary supply, increase your interest rates on your mortgages. He's going to give you lots of nice, lovely things.
Don't you think that would make my life easier?
Yeah, but you made everybody else's life more difficult.
It's because I genuinely believe it would not be the responsible thing to do.
Yeah, to have you as Chancellor now as PM.
That I'm saying that we should go down this course, be
Oh yeah, oh yes, that's great. So here I've just set this fire as Chief of the Fire Brigade. I know I seem like a bit of an arsonist, but let's just keep it going for a wee while. Let's throw some wood on this fire. The building's burning quite nicely. Oh look, there's a fire over there. Let's go and put it out, guys. I just noticed that. Oh yes, did you? Wonder who started that, Rishi?
careful with our borrowing, manage it carefully, but help people with the cost of living this year, which is what we're doing.
Nobody, Mr. Sunak, is saying that you should go on a massive spending spree. And of course, over time, you need to get the budget deficit down. This is...
Oh, the budget, maybe. So I thought that was why we all went through austerity. The austerity we were all scrimping and scraping at. Thought that was the whole purpose of that, but yeah, again, maybe the problem isn't the budget. Maybe the problem are the people who are managing the budget. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe it's the Conservative Party as a whole that's the problem, not the solution.
This is about speed, and you're doing it so quickly that you're going to make things worse. And I wonder what
Yeah, that's right. It's almost as if he's doing it deliberately.
the rush is. After all, among the major economies of the world, which one has higher national or lower national debt than we have?
Well, of those major economies...
Of the G7.
Of the G7?
Which one?
We're in the middle of the pack.
No, we're not actually. Everyone has more debt, bar Germany.
No, that's...
Okay, I'll give you the figures. Canada, 118%, the US, 137%, Italy, 151%, Japan, 266%, the UK, 96%, the Eurozone's 96% too, Germany, 70%.
Right. So
Since our national debt is not out of kilter, why are you in such a rush to get the deficit down?
You want to make these international comparisons. We should go in through those properly, right? What's happening in the US at the moment? Look where interest rates are in the US. I don't want to have interest rates here go higher than they need to be.
But they're mortgage rates.
Well, I don't want them to go up any higher than they're going to be. Mortgage rates in the US are already 50% higher than they are here.
Oh, great. So Dopey Joe, I'm sure that wasn't the same under Trump, just pointing that out, but Dopey Joe can't run a bath, and interest, and now the interest rates are sky high.
The US also benefits as being the world's reserve currency. You mentioned Japan. Japan funds the majority of its debt internally from its own savers. That's not what we do here in the UK. We have to attract money from around the world to fund our deficit.
Even the OECD.
No, let me just finish on this. Well, hang on, let me just finish.
Says that your fiscal stance as Chancellor was too contractionary, that you were cutting the deficit so quickly that you are undermining growth. That's the OECD.
There you go.
Well, actually, I've set up a very clear plan for growth. And the way we're going to get growth in this economy...
No, the way you get growth is to give access to capital for stage 1, stage 2 entrepreneurs. That's how you get growth in the economy, dum-dum.
...is by doing the things that actually drive productivity up.
No, it's not productivity. You can get growth from startup companies. That's the whole point.
And that's by reforming business taxation, so we get...
The money that comes in to the business is just capital, just money. It doesn't really matter, business taxations or not. The entrepreneur to grow the economy knows what, or to grow his business, knows what's best in his business. It's not for you to macromanage what you think is going to be best in that individual's business. That individual might get it wrong and his business will go down the pan. What we need to do is get access to more stage 1, stage 2 entrepreneurs who've got good ideas. People who've got great ideas. We need to get the next Google, the next Tesla. We have to get the ones and give it to those that are going to give us growth. That's what we need to do.
Companies to invest more. That's what I've said that we will do this autumn.
Yeah, but they need access to capital. You need to get the new startups access to funding.
Reform taxation so that companies innovate more and invest in R&D.
So again, you're telling the companies they've got to innovate more. You're telling the companies just required to get less taxation, and they decide where it's going to be, the money's best to go. The entrepreneurs or the board of any company is going to have a greater understanding of where that money should go than you, as the Chancellor.
Deregulate to take advantage of our Brexit freedoms,
Yeah, well, that's true.
Creating things like free ports, which I've done around.
So, but why don't you just reduce taxation for everybody? If you reduce taxation, then it's going to be a more attractive country to invest in, reducing both corporate and... look what's happening in Ireland with the corporate tax rates. That if you reduce corporate tax and taxation more, that you're going to increase inward investment, as well as increase the ability for people to generate money here and keep their own money.
These are all long-term. We're facing a recession now.
Yeah, but what we should do is focus on long-term growth, because that's what we need, sustainable growth, not a sugar rush boom that will make us all feel better for months, but then it runs out of control. Then inflation gets set into the system. Then the Bank of England has to react with even higher interest rates. That's not a good situation for anybody, and we should be very careful about doing things that make that more likely.
Just finally, before I come on, are you saying that the Bank of England would continue to increase rates even if we were in a recession?
The Bank of England's job...
So That's very interesting. That's very interesting point, and that's something you should be worried about. So we're going to go into a recession with tax rates the highest have been for 70 years. You're going to we could be going into a recession with interest rates on the rise as well as fuel costs. So you guys are going to feel it right in your pockets. You better be well awake for this one coming.
Is to manage inflation and inflation expectations.
So even if the inflation, so we could have the Bank of England having to manage 10% inflation, which she's basically baked into the system, 10%. In a recession, the Bank of England will then have to put up interest rates to squash inflation, which will deepen the actual recession.
Are you saying it would do that?
The Bank of England is independent. But I think it's pretty
so
clear.
So you don't know?
It's pretty clear that if inflation is high...
Which he's caused.
If inflation expectations are running ahead of target...
So that means the inflation could actually go up instead of down.
The Bank of England will act forcefully in their...
So the Bank of England in a recession, because correctly, I mean, and that is correct, that Bank of England have got to suppress inflation. That in a recession, they could be increasing taxes. What are you guys saying? Aloha. Let me just get this up. We'll make it bigger. What am I doing here? Is that all of us? So is Truss is with? Well, if she's not with, she's certainly a Remainer and part of the ambition for the globalists as to have a technocracy, a one world government with a one world currency, which they'll all control. So as a Remainer, the EU was one of the steps. The next step is to combine Africa and the EU, so the African Union and the EU Union. That's why we've got open door immigration just now. It's planned by the globalists to it was signed up in the Barcelona process, the Union of the Mediterranean, and now the UN Compact in Marrakesh, that these people are meant to be coming here because we are basically signed up to the global agenda, and we're being displaced in our own country, and it's been deliberately done by our political class. So to answer your question, Truss is a Remainer, and Truss came from a radical left family. She then joined the Liberal Democrats, which are a globalist shill bunch, WEF, whatever you want. They've got the Nazi gay pride swastika on their profile picture. So she is definitely a Remainer, and she basically WEF, yeah. WEF will manifest its way down where people won't actually know that they're actually part of the cabal. So some people could be oblivious to their involvement, but I wouldn't think anybody, the higher echelons of the Conservative Party don't actually know. Sanction them and look, WEF, sanction them, this looks bad for Sturgeon and her plans. Maybe they got bored of her. Yeah, well, no, but you've got to remember that Sturgeon's just another stooge for the globalists as well. She's a Remainer. She wants to rejoin. She's a rejoiner of the EU, which is, as I said, part of the plan to amalgamate all of the different economic unions into one global technocracy, whether it be the United Nations, under the United Nations or something. They'll have a plan to have an undemocratic, non-accountable technocracy that these people will be eating beef and you'll be eating the bugs. The intro music, Rishi, are you the weakest link? Goodbye. You are the weakest link. Rishi, you are the weakest link. Goodbye. How the mighty falls superbly. They said you were only one man and a phone. Who's now carrying on? Respect. Cheers, William. Cheers, buddy. Yeah. Jean Pierre, yeah, I know. Diversity hire. I feel sorry for her. She seems like quite a nice person, but you can't give any quarters when it's coming to the higher echelons of politics. She's been calling everybody racist on their political assent to becoming a terrible press secretary. Absolutely clownish. I mean, but Biden's lost the plot anyway, and it's like we're just living in just a bunch of lies now. 2 negative quarters, there's not a recession, and we're getting lied to now. So we're actually now having to absorb the lies and then think. Are they stupid, or do they think we're stupid, or are we just being stupid just listening to them? It's 1984, it's Orwellian what they're doing. Men are women, women are men, 2 + 2 is 5. I mean, anybody, you should read 1984. They are trying to get us into a dystopia. When you throw oil on the fire for a sec or two, it goes down till the water within the oil evaporates, then it roars higher. Yeah, interesting. I used to buy the British Standard mark on commodities. Not much going on now, and they let China take all of the textiles. Yeah, of course it did. It was going to get manufactured cheaper at that point anyway. Right, let's keep going. Let's crack on.
Their own words to control that.
You'll solve the inflation problem if you put us into a recession. Let me ask you this, though.
You'll solve the inflation problem if you put us into a recession. This could be a bad recession, so keep your cash alive as well. Make sure you've got cash, because you'll be able to buy things cheap.
On the tax rise.
Andrew, this is
an important problem if you put us into a recession. Let me ask you this, though, on the tax rise.
Andrew,
this is important because it's about families. Because it was clear we were heading for a painful cost of living crisis early this year. You could see it coming, but you could see it coming at the end of last year. But the taxes you chose to raise, national insurance and freezing income tax thresholds, they reduced people's take-home pay and made the cost of living crisis even worse.
So you're reducing your money by inflation. So that's why the trade unions are going on strike, because the money in your pocket through the inflation that he caused is depreciating. He's reducing take-home pay by the taxation that he's put through, and he's also increasing other direct taxation to the highest it's been in 70 years, and he wants to become the Prime Minister.
I also chose to raise taxes on the largest companies in this country.
Well, you're not doing that till next year.
Yeah, and that's going to raise more money than the things that you mentioned. Because I think we had to share the load fairly.
Why? But it's not fair, is it? You chose taxes like national insurance and income tax thresholds that hurt workers, not the affluent retired, not those living on investment income. They don't pay national insurance. You penalise workers.
Well, no, actually, what I did was try and fix the problems that we've got and do it in the fairest way possible. And actually...
by my wife not paying any taxes and letting the little guy suffer, letting the workers suffer.
Freezing thresholds, which you mentioned, is a policy that I put in place, is a way to do that without affecting people's cash take-home pay. And it's an entirely progressive measure, Andrew. And all the independent experts and commentators described it as progressive at the time.
Because
those with the broader shoulders contribute more. That's what happens when
unless you're Rishi Sunak's wife, who is a non-dom.
By freezing thresholds at a time when inflation is rising, you have dragged very low earners into the 20% tax bracket, and before they didn't pay any tax. You've dragged them into the basic rate of tax for the first time. Why is that fair?
He's brilliant. I have to say, Fat Andy is absolutely brilliant. Great questions. Whoever his team is, and over the years, he's been absolutely amazing, to be honest. He's scared of me, but he knows that I would outmatch him.
Because freezing thresholds means that those with the broader shoulders contribute the most.
I'm talking about the lowest paid.
Exactly. Well, his wife swans about, doesn't pay any taxes. That's it. He's mugging you guys off.
Lowest paid of benefit.
And I wouldn't say voting for the Labour Party would be any better, so I wouldn't be jumping off one out the pot into the fire there either. UK reform, guys.
Pay tax
from
for
the
that.
tax cuts that I've put in place. Actually, for the 2 million lowest paid in this country who move off welfare and into work, they benefited from a very significant tax cut that I put in place. And just this month, we raised the threshold that those workers that you're talking about start paying any tax on national insurance at all.
They are
That's
now
a tax
paying
cut that is
income
worth
tax that they never paid it before. Is that correct?
£330 a year.
Yeah, that's before you take into account the rise in national insurance as well.
Yeah, but
let me-
Andrew also, look, so that way to raise money is undoubtedly, objectively progressive. Now, you might say you don't need to raise any money and we'd rather just have higher borrowing. That's a completely reasonable position. But if you take the position that we do need to raise the money, I think that is a fair way to do it, alongside asking the largest companies to contribute more as well. And it was described as progressive at the time. But I do want to cut taxes for people in work.
So he did say that he's got no friends in the working class, so it's not really any loss to him if you guys are all getting screwed. This is the largest transfer of wealth from the middle class and the working class to the globalist elite as well. So they've done all right. He's okay about it. You getting taxed more to make sure they can put down inflation after them locking you in your house for 2 years and mugging you off that way as well.
Which is why, under my plans, we will deliver the first income tax cut in 16 years.
Ooh. The taxes are the highest in 73 years, I think.
This Parliament.
Let's just actually verify that. Taxes in the UK are high by historical standards at 34.4% of national income. The tax take is at its highest sustained level since the 1940s. So in the 1940s, they've now taken us back and taken more of your money away from you, and it hasn't been replicated since the 1940s, bearing in mind we were in World War II.
That I've paid for and put in my plans, because hard work is something that I want to reward. And as Prime Minister, I want to go further than that and deliver more income tax
What
cuts.
is it? What is progressive?
Oh, that's nice of him, isn't it? I wonder if there'll be another pandemic of monkeypox that we could destroy our economy for again.
About this? What is rewarding hard work? When by the middle of this decade, 9 million people will be paying the higher 40% tax rate. 1 in 4 taxpayers will be in a tax bracket originally meant for only top earners like yourself. How is that Tory or fair?
Because 75% of people under your numbers, the vast majority of people, will be paying the basic rate of tax. That's the low and middle earners, and that's why I'm delivering a tax cut for those people.
But it was never meant for 25% to be paying the 40%. When your hero, Nigel Lawson, introduced the top rate of 40%, he made it clear it was only for high earners, not for middle earners.
Well, we're in a situation now which is 30 years forward from that, right? So what I'm doing...
You've got a picture of him in your office.
I do. And actually the tax system that I'm trying to deliver is inspired by what he did, which is to have a broad base and lower rates. And that's why I want to cut income tax in this Parliament for the first time in 16 years. And as Prime Minister, over time, as we grow the economy and get to grips with public spending, I want to go further on cutting income tax because I want to reward hard work.
Let's look at another tax in judgment. In February, you told the Commons that cutting VAT on energy bills would, these are your words, disproportionately benefit wealthier households. Now, as your campaign fails to gain traction among Tory members, you propose to suspend VAT on energy bills. It's not just bad judgment.
Let's hear that again.
And get to grips with public spending. I want to go further on cutting income tax because I want to reward hard work.
Let's look at another tax in judgment. In February, you told the Commons that cutting VAT on energy bills would, these are your words, disproportionately benefit wealthier households.
So again, VAT is a flat tax, not a progressive tax. I'm not using progressive in the Marxian way that all these commie scumbags use progressive, the word progressive. I'm using it in the proper way. So VAT is not progressive. VAT affects those who are in low pay and middle incomes greater than it does those who are obviously more affluent. So
now, as your campaign fails to gain traction among Tory members, you propose to suspend VAT on energy bills. It's not just bad judgment, it's lack of consistency.
No, absolutely not. I've always
what,
said...
say that last bit again?
Energy bills. Now, as your campaign fails to gain traction among Tory members, you propose to suspend VAT on energy bills.
So again, you guys will be suffering from increased energy prices as well, that because of the new green agenda that the commies, wee baldy Lenin, wee baldy Lenin, the Green Party, wee gay Lenin, has brought in.
Not just
been embraced by the Conservative Party.
Bad judgment, it's lack of consistency.
No, absolutely not. I've always said from the beginning that as we knew more about what energy bills would actually be in the autumn, that I would stand ready to do more. We've already announced, and I announced as Chancellor, significant support for millions of families across the country to help with energy bills.
So they caused the problem, and then they're the solution.
I understand that.
But now, so what's
Did
changed?
You argued against VAT, cutting VAT.
Andrew, I'm here to answer your questions. Let me just finish the question. So what's changed since then? What's changed is energy bills are now forecast to be a few £100 higher than we had estimated when I announced that support. So it's reasonable for the government to respond by providing a bit more support where it can, except...
So again, cause the problem, and then they're the solution, and then they'll tax you. So they'll give you the money for the increase in energy costs, then they'll tax the money back off you to pay for the money that they've actually given you. So we've got a whole bureaucracy of people giving money to you and then taxing it back off you to pay for the money that they've actually given you.
That it can't solve all problems. And this is...
But you do start a lot of them.
One of the few levers available to government to pull quickly to get support to millions of people. If I become Prime Minister at the beginning of September and energy bills go up in October, there is no time to design something else that would be a more perfect way of helping people. You've got to work with what you've got. And actually, VAT is it is a blunt instrument. I stick by what I said.
No, you said it disproportionately benefits the wealthy.
And it does, but it provides support to everybody. And if you've got 4 weeks after becoming Prime Minister to put in place a policy that will help 30 million households, this is pretty much the only lever left.
So that's all you're going to do?
It comes on top of providing £1,200 of support already for the most vulnerable families.
That was
so they're going to tax you to pay for the money that they're going to give you back. So they then tax you and they decide how much money that they're going to give you back of the money that they've taxed you to pay for your energy bills. So that whole bureaucracy, they might as well just not have taxed you as much, because then they've got to then tax you, take the money off you, then divvy it up, which is another bureaucratic process, divvy it up, and then give it back to you in a way that they want you to actually have it. So we've just set up a full process. If they just reduce taxation, direct taxation, then they wouldn't actually have to increase a whole bureaucracy to actually then give you your money back to pay for the costs of fuel.
Deal with the price rise of energy.
I know it sounds like they're helping you out, but they're not really. They're just taking money off you to give you it back.
In April of this year.
No, it wasn't, Andrew.
There's even more coming down. So there's no more coming down other than what you've announced.
Andrew, you have to remember, I stood up in May when we had an estimate from Ofgem about what would happen to the price cap in October, which at that point we expected to be £2,800.
It's going to be over £3,000 now.
And that's why, on top of the support that I announced in May to kick in autumn and winter, I said I would do more.
And we nippies want to, her and Gay Moby are wanting to reduce the amount of drilling and oil supply we've got in Scotland.
And the easiest way to do more, accepting that it's not perfect, is to reduce VAT on energy. So there is already...
I met a girl today. She was handing out leaflets, flyers for reducing climate change. I said, you better go into China because they're the ones that are producing the most CO2. She said, no, we produce more CO2 per head of population. I was like, what? But surely it's the quantity of CO2. That's what you're arguing for. And she was a wee bit dumbfounded, didn't know what to say. And that's the problem. We've got these highly opinionated children who are have been indoctrinated into by the governments, by the globalists, into believing things that don't have any foundation in even the science that they're trying to tell you. What they're actually trying to tell you. How the mighty fall superbly. He has got the drugs. Hi Rishi. Thumb punt that Blair. 4 weeks. What about the 2 years exactly? When they throw out blah blah blah. If you are used to be British, yeah. So.
Support in place for the autumn and winter, but we need to do more, and that is the easiest thing to do. And look, Andrew, I've been in government.
It's also marginal, Mr. Sunak, because energy bills are going to go up by about another £1,000 this October.
Wow, you guys are going to get smashed, man. You guys are. So I mean, that's not including the price of oil. Apparently the petrol producing companies are absolutely milking it in just now, absolutely making a fortune. Again, the transfer from the poorest to the wealthiest, they're absolutely milking you guys just now.
And that's why I announced support. That's why I announced support worth £1,200.
So he's increasing the prices by going for this green agenda. He's then increasing your taxes to pay for the money he's going to give you back for the increase in costs that this is actually costing you for the price of energy for the green agenda, and obviously for incompetence from the Great Reset.
T suspension is about £150 for the average bill. It barely touches the side. Bills will still go up by £850.
It comes on top of the support that I've already announced for the autumn and winter, which is worth up to £1,200 for the most vulnerable families. So it's additional to that, Andrew. And the reason it's additional is because we knew bills were going to go up. I announced support to help, but now the situation is worse and I'd like to do more. And this is the easiest lever that government can pull. It's not perfect. I'm not going to pretend that it is perfect. But at this point, if I became Prime Minister in September, you'd have weeks to put in place help. This is the only lever available.
It wasn't just suspending VAT and energy bills that you opposed. You also opposed the windfall tax. Though, like your VAT change, you finally said, I'll have a windfall tax. I mean, Shell has made a record $20 billion in the first half of this year alone. $20 billion. It's done multi-billion buyback of its own shares. I mean, there's a windfall if ever there was one. You were wrong to oppose that, weren't you? They deserve a windfall tax.
They do, and I put one in place.
And you were against it.
And the situation changed. And when the facts
changed... Why did it change? You knew that the windfall profits were coming.
We did not know how high and how long oil prices would stay at those levels for. And when it was clear that this situation was going to last longer and be more severe, I took the decision, which, by the way, lots of people criticised me for and disagreed with. I took the decision that it was right to levy a windfall profit in these exceptional circumstances
you just seem
on these companies.
To be consistently inconsistent on all these things. You were against the windfall tax, now you're in favour. You were against...
Oh, to be fair, I think that's slightly disingenuous. To give Rishi some credit that he's in politics, situations change, but I mean, it's really it's very difficult to give people credit when they're causing the problems as well. I told you the arsonist in charge of the fire station, the fire brigade.
That now you're in favour. You raised any national insurance, but then you had to come back and raise the threshold for national insurance to cut it a little bit. You've got corporation tax. You've got all sorts of incentives to mitigate the raise. I mean, you just seem to be all over the place.
No,
actually, no. What it seems, Andrew, is that he seems to be causing the problems and then putting out the problems. That seems to be what's happening.
Actually, that's what tax reform looks like, Andrew.
Is it all over the shop? Getting the poorest to pay the most, while my friends don't have to pay anything.
Let's talk
It's
about
chaos, not tax reform.
let's talk about corporation tax, which you mentioned there at the end of your list. I'm trying to move to a system that means that we are internationally competitive, but also that we actually encourage the types of activity that drive growth and productivity. And that system means we have a higher rate, which is still, by the way, the lowest.
You shouldn't be interfering. You shouldn't be trying to macro manage a micro business. That's not what you should be doing. That's almost socialist.
In the G7, the fourth lowest in the G20, exempt small businesses from the increase, combined with tax incentives, big tax cuts for business investment in capital.
You shouldn't be doing it. You should just be cutting business taxes across the board. You shouldn't be trying to macromanage it.
And business investment in R&D.
That is a reform. Massive tax cuts.
That is a reform. That is a reform of the tax system, which will drive growth and productivity.
And investments.
So entrepreneurs drive growth and productivity.
Flatlining.
Yeah, because we've also had Omicron in the middle of all of that.
It's flatlining now.
Oh, Omicron.
As well. We're over that. It's still flatlining.
Because there's a lot of uncertainty hanging over the economy.
It will fall.
Yes, and if you talk to businesses...
That's your tax.
Well, hang on. If you talk to businesses, why don't you talk to the CBI and businesses and ask them what they think would make the difference to their business investment? Do you know what they say?
Okay.
They say that if you cut the tax on business investment, we will invest more. That's what business says. That's what they've said to me.
Good luck to see if we do that. You justified raising taxes to produce more money for the NHS. Yet even after they had this extra cash, waiting lists have risen from 6 million at the start of this year.
Don't forget, I think they get rid of people who wouldn't take the JAG as well. So I think they should be reinstated. I would reinstate them immediately.
Now 6.7 million, and they're heading to over 9 million by 2024. So you broke a manifesto pledge not to raise taxes. Waiting lists have risen from 6 million at the start of this year. They're now 6.7 million.
So what they've done to alleviate this COVID, they've actually now made things worse for people who may die as a result of these idiots locking us in their house for 2 years and giving us experimental drugs, which may have there's been allegations that this might have caused adverse effects, and somebody else died. Another female rugby player died, and I think somebody else, a guy, died on the football pitch, or I think he was an American or something like that. So they've caused all this.
And they're heading to over 9 million by 2024.
Wow! So you guys are all going to be waiting for your operations on the NHS, even though they've raised taxes, because don't forget they've kicked out all the nurses and the doctors who wouldn't take the JAG, I'm sure.
So you broke a manifesto pledge not to raise taxes.
Yeah, so that's just complete nonsense. So they've done that deliberately. That keeps you in line.
For extra cash for the NHS, and waiting lists are still set to rise 50%.
Well, if you go open door immigration and you're letting people just walk into the country and get access to the NHS, what do you expect?
Do you know that when you stumped up the cash?
First of all, you talked about manifesto pledges, Andrew, right? And you pick on that one. You know, in our manifesto...
That's the one you broke.
Yeah.
Well, you know, in our manifesto, we also said that we would have debt lower at the end of the...
I think we need to get some sort of contract between the government and the people. This Nigel Farage, there has to be some sort of legal requirements that these people do have to do. If they don't do it, they get sacked, or there has to be a punishment, cause and effect, because they just seem to be able to lie and do exactly the opposite of what's in the manifesto pledges. My advice to you is stop voting for them. Stop voting. Vote for UK reform. Vote for somebody else. If you go outside the Lib Lab Con Party, the SNP Greens, if you go outside that, then you'll really shake things up if you vote for another party.
Parliament in the beginning. We also said that we wouldn't borrow for day-to-day spending.
My question was, why is this money not making any difference?
You made a very pointed comment about breaking manifesto promises.
Deal with the NHS.
Without...
Yeah, well, I know it's like that. Yeah, the first brown Pinocchio.
And I will in a second, without recognising that we had a set of manifesto promises about fiscal policy, taxes, borrowing and spending. Do you know what happened?
Yeah, you just lied, as usual. Just made the fucking up. Just lied. Just made it up. We wrote a whole bunch of stuff down in the manifestos and then just did exactly the opposite. Whatever the World Economic Forum wanted, we were on board with that.
We got hit by a pandemic.
Oh, my goodness, got the cold. We got the cold.
A once-in-a-century event.
It wasn't really. There was older people and people with contraindications that died, and there was only very few people who weren't elderly or had contraindications. So we shouldn't be locking down the economy on that basis.
And that meant things changed. So yes, were we not able to keep the manifesto promise on tax? We weren't, but we also weren't.
Yeah, but let's be honest, you can't keep your promises in immigration either. There's tons of things you lie about. It's like a party for Pinocchios. Once you realise that they're on the WEF's agenda and not on yours, it all makes sense.
Able to keep the manifesto promise on borrowing and debt, and I'm also trying to prioritise that. But let's turn to the NHS, because you're absolutely right.
Why are waiting lists going to be close to 10 million?
So I completely agree. It's right that we fund the NHS properly, but it's...
So state funding of the NHS means that you are going to be on massive waiting queues because the government has increased your taxation to reduce the wait times, yet the wait times are going up. That makes perfect sense.
It's equally important that we get the reform we need so we get value for money out of that. And that's why I've published a plan.
What we're going to do is we plan to get more people, bureaucrats, to look into the bureaucracy of the National Health Service, to see if we can add some more bureaucracy on it and make it completely top heavy, to make sure that we have a good number of bureaucrats in the NHS, and we're going to then give them medical doctor degrees, and they can do part-time bureaucracy, part-time operations, just to get the numbers down.
Comprehensive plan to tackle the waiting list. It will be one of my priorities as Prime Minister to get to grips with them. There's a range of things we can do.
What's the major thing you would do?
Well,
just shoot the people out the back. It's much quicker. It gets rid of them, gets rid of the waiting list. What you should do, and what the correct question is, anybody who's been sacked for refusing to take the COVID jab should be reinstated, whether it be doctor or nurse.
Well, structurally, I would set up a task force approach to dealing with it.
So a task force is going to get waiting lists down.
Oh, God, not another task force. My God, that's not really very good, is it?
There are 10 million people on them in 2 years' time.
Well, it was a task force that helped us get the vaccine rollout going, Andrew.
That was a much more specific issue.
Well, no, actually, this is also a specific issue. What we need to do is create more elective surgical hubs, because they are an efficient way to cut through the elective surgery.
You're going to create how many?
We're going to create over 100. Right.
And that's going to get the waiting list down?
Yes, it will, Andrew, because if you do elective surgery in a specialised, dedicated unit, it's far more productive than doing it inside of hospitals. I'll tell you what you asked. Let me tell you the other things we're going to do.
I just wanted the main one.
Well, there's not just one thing.
Well,
these are complex problems, Andrew. They don't lend themselves to just one...
Fair enough, I agree with him there. You should let him see his part, Andrew.
No, but their problems have got worse under your government's reign. There are now 300,000 people
Andrew, let's just remember, I also left the government, and now I want to change...
Only a few days ago.
Well, I want to do things differently. As Prime Minister, I want to bring grip to this problem, and I've set out a very clear plan to do it.
Many of them watching this programme, perhaps. 300,000 people have been on a waiting list for a year or more. What are you going to do about that?
Yes, I think that's unacceptable.
Would you wait for a year?
No, I think this is unacceptable.
No, he'd go private. Still be silly.
Many people watching are probably thinking, well, I should go private. And I've said I don't want them to have to do that.
But they are going private.
Yes, and they shouldn't have to.
Numbers.
Yeah, and that's what I've said very clearly.
So you're paying tax to pay for the NHS, and now you're paying to go private because of the mess of the Conservative government for the NHS. Great.
Really, that's why I've set out a plan. It was one of the first policy announcements of my campaign.
Okay.
We need more elective surgical hubs. We need more community diagnostic centres. We need to use technology to cut through all the way that we do the actual appointment scheduling to free up clinicians' time. And we need to make sure that we call out poor leadership in the NHS, because there are great examples of good leadership and they know how to do it and we should learn from them.
We've got about-
I will bring the same grip and urgency that I brought to helping this country get through the pandemic,
Oh, great.
delivering things like furlough
All right.
in record time.
Oh, great.
It's fine.
I will bring that to gripping the NHS waiting
Okay.
list problem as well.
I'm going to be the fire starter and the fire department's chief putter outer, whatever they're called, fireman.
We've got about 6 minutes left. Let's look at
Good.
another matter.
Thank God.
Sending illegal migrants to Rwanda.
They should be going back to the country of origin. But, of course, this is a nonsense, because we already know that they've already signed us up. The globalists have already signed us up to the Barcelona process, the Union of the Mediterranean, and UN Compact in Marrakesh. All of the political parties are globalist from the higher-ups, and none of them are going to do anything because they've caused the problem. So unless you vote for somebody else, these are the people who've caused the problem.
None has gone so far, but you've said you...
And none's likely to go. Look at that face. And none's likely to go either. But they've given 20 million to Rwanda, and we're going to import more people from Rwanda as well.
get it, quote, off the ground and operating at scale. That's your words. Since Rwanda says it has capacity for only 200, how would you do that?
That's what the initial capacity is about, and this is a pilot program.
So I think when I was deported back to Dubai, they didn't just deport me to Rwanda, they deported me back to my country of origin. So they said, right, you're no longer here, you're out, and I went back to the UK. Why you would have to put them to a third party? Okay, right, so we already know that this is all lies anyway, because the globalists have already set us all up for this, and people are just walking into the country, and even the people who are not asylum seekers are not being deported, even if they commit horrendous crimes, they're not being deported. So it's all lies. All this is just a smokescreen. The Rwanda stuff is just all lies and nonsense. Just lying to us. That's why his nose is so big. It's like huge. Pinocchio.
Program that we've negotiated with Rwanda at
It's
first.
cost 120 million.
Yes, and we need to make sure that we get value for that, which means we need to make it work.
That's 600,000 per migrant. It would be cheaper to send them to board at Euro Public School in Winchester.
Yeah, so what we need...
Euro Public School in Winchester. 600 grand a year for the migrants.
to do is make sure that the deterrent effect of this program
All right, so it's a kid-on deterrent effect. That's good. Well, at least we know we're getting scammed more for our taxis with these pricks as well.
deters thousands of people from coming across the
That's not going to deter them. What's going to deter them if they get sent back to country of origin?
channel into the UK, because you know how much we're spending today on hotels?
It would cost a lot less if you just put them on a plane back to country of origin.
£5 million a
DNA test them. Oh well,
day.
the Conservative Party are putting them in the hotels. So you've actually incentivised them to actually go into the hotels.
Spend 600,000 per head if you ever do get anyone to go to
You could probably get them to buy a hotel each.
Rwanda.
But what we need to do is get this up and running, and then if we can get it up and running and successful, and it will serve as a strong deterrent effect, we then
Rubbish. And they should be sent back to country of origin.
won't have tens of thousands of people coming here, which are costing
there's
us
no
£5
evidence
million.
it's a deterrent effect. None.
That's
They're still
because
pouring across the
that's
channel.
because we've just started, Andrew.
They're getting it ferried across the channel by the RNLI and the British Navy. So obviously the government are actually deliberately importing them, isn't it? And this is all just absolutely smoke and mirrors, because if people knew the real story, that the Conservative Party are the people that are doing this, then they wouldn't vote for them anymore.
So my priority is to make sure that we make that policy work. And if we can make that policy work, which is
Which they're not going to do, because it's not what the globalists want.
the right thing to do, because we do have to tackle this issue,
Which they're not doing.
then if it means that tens of thousands of people are not coming here, then we will save
No, I
over
understand
£1 billion
the
a year.
practice.
All right, I see. So the problem that you've caused, the British taxpayer are paying for with increased taxes, increased interest rates, soon to be in recession, you've caused
I'm worried about that.
Well, some of your pals who own hotels might be financing you through the back door for filling out their hotels
You also want a cap,
at taxpayers' expense.
even on valid asylum seekers who come here legally. Have you any legal advice that that would not be against international law?
I suppose the UN Compact and genocide as well by allowing a country's indigenous population to be ethnically replaced.
Yes, I think Parliament rightly should be sovereign about
No, but
these
have you
matters.
had legal advice that that would not be against international law?
No, I don't believe it would be.
Well, but have you had legal advice?
Well, I'm not in government at the moment, Andrew, so I can't get advice from the Attorney
Well,
General.
you can.
But from the-
Well, if immigrants gone through 10 other countries that are not in harm's way to come here, then I think they've broken the law as well, isn't it? They have to go back to that country as well.
This city's awash with lawyers.
Well,
You
from
can
the,
get plenty.
from the advice I have, that it is. And I think this is, you bring up a broader problem, right? So we clearly have a problem with human rights law in this country that is making it difficult for us to achieve our objectives.
They've caused this and now they're blaming the law. So the people who have made the law are now blaming the law as if, oh, it's not me, it's somebody else.
That's why we're passing a British Bill of Rights, which will
Oh, that's going to be great, that is.
help with all of these things.
Oh, great. But we're still in the HRC.
That's why I've suggested moving away from the ECHR definition.
ECHR, sorry, apologies. But we moved away from the definition, not from the court. We should be out the court.
Of asylum to the Refugee Convention definition, which is still an international legal standard, but narrower. If we do these things, we will be able to make progress on this problem. But I'm not going to pretend it's easy. This is a complicated problem.
Is there not something unsavory about the son of a successful middle-class migrants prepared to turn away asylum seekers?
They're not asylum seekers. It's been deliberately done as the globalists want through the UN Compact. This is where Fat Andy's part of the globalist shows. Fat Andy knows that the globalists have done this and he's just pretending that it's the son of a migrant.
With a valid claim.
No, there is nothing wrong about that.
But if you were just seeking asylum, you would then have to go back to your country of origin. If you're seeking asylum, you would only be seeking asylum for the period of time that you're required to seek asylum for, unless you couldn't go back. Now, in exceptional circumstances, you couldn't go back. But being an asylum seeker shouldn't just give you an indefinite right to stay. This is where the problem is. If the country where you were seeking asylum from situation has changed, then you should probably go back to country of origin.
And it's in fact because I am that
Come
person.
here legally.
Yes, it's because my family and millions like them were welcomed here legally. This country has a
we're
proud
talking
and
about
compassionate...
Aye, but that's all happened in the last 50 years as well. This has been deliberately done by the globalists over the last 50 years. Don't forget the WEF has been going for 40, 50 years. They've not just, it's not, this has all only happened through under their watch as well. Spent £1 million a day up to £1 billion. I'll take you 3,333 years to hit the billion. 1,000 athletes collapse and die in heart problems. Blood clots March 21 to June 2022. It's just like a big board game to these people, yeah. Wishy, Rishi, sounds like a game. Showing on, come on down. 4 weeks, what about the last 2 years? Thumb punt, just like the Blair, aye. Anyway, we're nearly finished here.
Asylum seekers.
This country has a proud and compassionate history of taking people in, but it is right that that process is legally, that is orderly, and that it is controlled. That's the type of system
You're
that I
not going
want
to turn
deliver.
away
You've not been doing that for about the last 30 years, 40 years.
even legal asylum seekers.
Because there is a finite amount of asylum seekers that we
All right.
can integrate and accommodate. And I think most reasonable people would agree with that. And it's totally, of course, at any moment in time, Andrew, there are probably a billion...
I actually quite like Rishi is on an individual basis. I don't actually dislike him. I think he's all right as an individual, but I certainly wouldn't be voting for him.
People that would love to move to the UK because this is an amazing country, right? But we clearly can't accept all of those, and we have to be practical about that. Where we can accept people, we should legally, and those who are trying to come here illegally, we should be very firm about stopping.
You talked a lot about your supposedly ordinary origins, your background. So why, when you were young, did you say you had no working class friends?
I mean, Andrew, we all say silly
no working class friends, and yet he's not really bothered about the working class paying for all the tax increases.
Things when we're students, but I've talked about my background. My family, as you said, were welcomed here as migrants.
No, we know that. I feel I almost know them personally myself. I've heard so much about. So it was just wrong when you said that.
Yeah, I'm glad. I grew up working in my mum's pharmacy.
No, we know all that.
And you don't grow up doing that unless you actually interact with lots of people. And I spent my time making sure that we served our community. And my parents worked incredibly hard to provide opportunities for me. And that's ultimately why I want to be Prime Minister, Andrew, because this country allowed my family to provide a better opportunity and future for me. And as Prime Minister, I want to do the same thing for everybody's children.
Well, that's certainly not what's happened over the last period of time.
Their background is so humble as yours, why they didn't have working class friends. But let's move on. On judgment, was it not bad judgment to think you could be Chancellor residing in Downing Street and yet your wife could remain a non-dom for tax purposes?
Here we go. You raise your taxes, but we'll just not pay ours.
Well, let's take a step back. I'm the one running for office and not my wife.
Still counts.
But
I'm talking about when you were Chancellor.
Yeah, but I'm the one running for office and not my wife. But my wife is also from abroad.
My wife is abroad.
And
the first foreign, I don't know if this is the first foreign First Lady or whatever the British equivalent is.
Several months ago, we addressed this thing and she resolved the situation. She made her own. She addressed the situation and made a statement about it.
What was the statement? I think we all want to know.
And I fully
being a non-dom is not automatic. You have to apply for it. So it meant that when ordinary families were struggling to make ends meet, you were whacking up their taxes. Your family was enjoying millions in tax exemptions.
No, my wife was following the rules that applied to her situation.
Only because she had applied to be a non-dom.
You are a non-dom as a matter of law. How you choose to file your taxes is a choice.
You can choose not to be a non-dom as a matter of tax status.
No, that's just simply not right. You can choose to how you file your tax returns.
She is not paying British tax.
Yes, but her status is determined by law because she is from abroad and she has her home abroad. And she does pay British tax and always has on all her British earnings.
Yes, which is the non-dom status, but not on her internationally.
She chose to resolve that situation.
It just seems a misjudgment, wasn't it?
Well, she chose to resolve that situation. And these things, as I discovered and learnt myself, are difficult when it comes to your family. But I've learned from that experience, and I'm confident that
not bothering about your family who's paying increased interest rates, increased taxes, increased going into recession. I mean, really, honestly.
Experience has actually made me better suited to now lead.
20 seconds. When you look at all this that we've talked about tonight, can you assure the people watching tonight that you have the experience to be Prime Minister in a few seconds?
People have seen me lead this country's economy through some incredibly challenging times over the past 2 years. They see me do it well. They've seen me do it with compassion. And I will bring exactly those same qualities to running this country as Prime Minister.
Rishi Sunak, we thank you for being here tonight. Now, we also wanted to interview the other contender for Tory leader, Liz Truss. She declined our invitation. Her choice, of course.
She went, no, Fat Andy, I'm not bringing you any cookies.
But that invitation still remains...
Come on, send me an invitation, Fat Andy.
...open. This has been an Andrew Neil Show special on Channel 4. Thanks for watching, and have a very good night.
I see, I never get invited. I think he's scared of me. What's going on? Is that us? Right, I'm off. I'm out here. Short but sweet, this one, ladies and gents. Love you guys. Love my baby gorillas.